Every generation has a player who changes the game forever. A player who doesn't just break records, but breaks expectations. For women's basketball, that player is Caitlin Clark. Before the sold-out arenas, the national television audiences, and the record-breaking performances, Caitlin Clark was simply a little girl from West Des Moines, Iowa, with a basketball in her hands and an impossible dream in her heart. Long before the world knew her name, she was spending countless hours in gyms, practicing shots that most people believed were too difficult, too risky, or simply impossible. Born on January 22, 2002, Caitlin grew up in a family where competition wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace. Whether it was basketball, soccer, softball, volleyball, or golf, sports were part of everyday life. Her parents encouraged hard work, discipline, and resilience, never treating her differently because she was a girl. Instead, they challenged her to compete against anyone willing to step onto the court. From a very young age, one thing became obvious. Caitlin didn't enjoy simply participating. She wanted to win. Friends, coaches, and teammates often noticed that she possessed a competitive fire far beyond her years. Losing frustrated her, but instead of making excuses, she used every defeat as motivation to improve. Every missed shot became another reason to stay after practice. Every difficult game became another lesson she carried into the next one. Most children practice layups. Caitlin practiced impossible shots. While other young players focused on shooting from the free throw line, Caitlin experimented with long-distance jumpers. Coaches sometimes shook their heads, believing those shots were too risky. But she kept practicing them anyway. She wasn't trying to be different. She was simply preparing for a future nobody else could imagine. As she grew older, her confidence grew with her. She wasn't afraid of taking the last shot. She wasn't afraid of failing. She believed that if you put in enough work, pressure becomes an opportunity rather than a burden. That mindset would eventually become her greatest weapon. When Caitlin entered Dowling Catholic High School, expectations were already high. Yet even the biggest supporters couldn't predict what was about to happen. Game after game, she dominated opponents with incredible scoring ability, elite passing, and basketball intelligence rarely seen at the high school level. She wasn't simply the best shooter on the floor. She was the smartest player on it. Defenders struggled to stop her because she could punish every mistake. If they guarded her too closely, she drove past them. If they gave her space, she launched another deep three-pointer with remarkable confidence. Soon, highlights of her games spread across social media. College coaches from across America began filling the stands just to watch her play. National recruiting rankings placed her among the very best prospects in the country. Scholarship offers poured in from some of the biggest college basketball programs. For most players, choosing a powerhouse school would have been the obvious decision. But Caitlin Clark wasn't interested in taking the easiest path. She wanted to build something special. Instead of leaving Iowa for a traditional basketball powerhouse, she made a decision that surprised many basketball experts. She committed to the University of Iowa. Many questioned the choice. Why stay home when so many championship programs wanted her? Caitlin's answer wasn't spoken through interviews. It was spoken through her actions. She believed Iowa could become one of the nation's best teams. More importantly, she believed she could help make that happen. That confidence wasn't arrogance. It came from thousands of hours spent alone in empty gyms, shooting until her arms were exhausted. It came from early mornings, late nights, and sacrifices most people never saw. By the time her high school career ended, Caitlin Clark had already become one of the most decorated players in America. She had scored thousands of points, earned national recognition, and built a reputation as one of the most exciting young talents the sport had ever seen. But what happened next would be even bigger. College basketball wasn't about to witness another great freshman. It was about to witness the arrival of a player who would transform the entire sport. A player whose fearless shooting would force coaches to redesign defensive strategies. A player whose games would attract millions of viewers. A player who would inspire young girls around the world to dream bigger than ever before. The basketball world didn't know it yet, but the revolution had already begun, and Caitlin Clark was leading it. Some athletes need years to earn respect. Caitlin Clark needed only a few games to prove that women's college basketball had entered a new era. When Caitlin Clark arrived at the University of Iowa in 2020, expectations were already sky-high. She had dominated high school basketball and entered college as one of the nation's top recruits. But college basketball is a different world. The game is faster, stronger, and far more physical. Many freshmen need time to adjust. Caitlin Clark didn't. From the opening games of her freshman season, she played with the confidence of a veteran. She attacked defenders without hesitation, delivered impossible passes, and launched three-pointers from distances that made fans gasp. Opposing coaches quickly realized they weren't facing an ordinary freshman. They were facing a player capable of changing an entire game in just a few minutes. What made Clark truly special wasn't just her scoring. It was her ability to read the floor. She could see passing lanes before they opened, anticipate defensive rotations, and make split-second decisions that left opponents helpless. One possession, she would drain a deep three. The next, she'd thread a perfect pass through three defenders for an easy layup. Defenses were constantly forced to guess, and most of the time they guessed wrong. By the end of her freshman season, Caitlin Clark wasn't simply one of the best newcomers in the country. She had become one of the best players in all of college basketball. Fans who had never watched women's basketball before were suddenly tuning in just to see what Clark would do next. As her sophomore season began, the spotlight grew even brighter. Every arena Iowa visited became louder. Ticket sales increased. Television networks started scheduling more Iowa games because audiences wanted to watch Caitlin Clark. She wasn't just winning games, she was attracting new fans to the sport. Then came the performances that would define her career. 40-point games became almost normal. Triple-doubles became headlines. Every week seemed to bring another record, another unforgettable highlight, another impossible shot from several feet behind the three-point line. Analysts began comparing her impact to some of the greatest playmakers basketball had ever seen. But Clark wasn't interested in comparisons. She had one goal: to make Iowa a championship contender. Her teammates trusted her completely. They knew that no matter how much pressure the game carried, Caitlin would never shy away from the biggest moment. Whether Iowa was trailing by 10 points or protecting a narrow lead, Clark wanted the ball in her hands. Pressure didn't scare her. It motivated her. That mentality became one of the defining characteristics of her career. As Iowa continued to win, Clark's confidence inspired everyone around her. Young players across America began practicing logo three-pointers because of her. Little girls started wearing her jersey and imitating her shooting form on playgrounds and school courts. She wasn't just becoming a basketball star, she was becoming a role model. But with success came criticism. Some analysts claimed she shot too much. Others believed she played with too much emotion. Every celebration, every facial expression, and every reaction became a topic of discussion on television and social media. Clark listened. Then she answered the only way she knew how: by playing even better. Every criticism seemed to fuel another incredible performance. Every doubt became another opportunity to prove people wrong. She didn't waste energy arguing with critics. Instead, she let the scoreboard speak for her. As the NCAA tournament approached, all eyes were on Iowa. Could Caitlin Clark carry her team against the nation's best? She responded with performances that instantly became part of college basketball history. She scored against elite defenses, created opportunities for teammates, and remained fearless no matter how intense the pressure became. Every tournament game added another unforgettable chapter to her growing legend. The deeper Iowa advanced, the larger the audience became. Millions of fans tuned in from around the world. Television ratings shattered expectations. Social media exploded after every game. Sports networks led with women's basketball highlights, something that had rarely happened before. For years, people had wondered whether women's college basketball could capture mainstream attention. Caitlin Clark helped answer that question. She didn't simply attract viewers. She created believers. By the end of the season, one thing had become undeniable. Caitlin Clark wasn't just changing Iowa basketball. She was changing women's basketball itself. Young athletes dreamed because of her. Coaches adapted because of her. Fans filled arenas because of her. And the greatest chapters of her story were still waiting to be written. Because just around the corner stood the biggest stage of all, a stage where rivalries would be born, records would fall, and Caitlin Clark would become one of the most recognizable names in the history of the sport. Great players win games. Legendary players change history. By 2023, Caitlin Clark was doing both. As Caitlin Clark entered the biggest stage of college basketball, she was no longer just a talented player from Iowa. She had become the face of the sport. Every arena she entered sold out. Thousands of fans arrived hours before tip-off just to watch her warm up. Young girls held homemade signs with her name, hoping for a wave or an autograph. Television cameras followed her every move because everyone knew that something extraordinary could happen at any moment. Then came the 2023 NCAA Tournament. This was the moment Caitlin had been preparing for her entire life. With every game, the pressure grew, but so did her performances. She delivered dazzling passes, impossible three-pointers, and fearless drives to the basket. Against some of the nation's toughest defenses, Clark looked completely comfortable. The brighter the lights became, the better she seemed to play. One of the most unforgettable performances came against South Carolina, a team that entered the Final Four undefeated and widely considered unbeatable. Many experts believed Iowa had little chance. Caitlin Clark had other plans. She put together one of the greatest performances in NCAA tournament history, scoring 41 points while controlling every aspect of the game. Every deep three-pointer, every assist, and every clutch basket stunned the basketball world. When the final buzzer sounded, Iowa had defeated the undefeated Giants, and Caitlin Clark had delivered a performance that instantly became legendary. That victory changed everything. Sports networks around the world led with her highlights. Social media exploded with clips of her logo-range shots. Even people who had never watched women's basketball before suddenly knew one name: Caitlin Clark. But the biggest challenge was still ahead. Waiting in the national championship game was LSU, led by another rising superstar, Angel Reese. Unlike Clark's calm and calculated style, Reese played with unmatched energy and physical dominance. She controlled the paint, attacked every rebound, and played with an emotional intensity that energized her teammates. The championship game became much more than basketball. It became the most talked-about matchup in women's sports. Millions tuned in to watch two completely different superstars battle for the biggest prize in college basketball. Although Iowa fell short in the championship game, something remarkable happened. The rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese captured the attention of the entire sports world. People debated every play, every celebration, every reaction, every moment. For weeks, it dominated headlines across television, newspapers, podcasts, and social media. But beneath all the discussion was one undeniable truth. Women's basketball had never received this much attention before. Clark and Reese had helped transform the sport into one of the biggest stories in America. Instead of slowing down after the championship loss, Caitlin Clark returned even stronger. The following season became one long history lesson. Record after record began to fall. She climbed the all-time NCAA scoring list with remarkable speed, passing legendary names who had dominated college basketball for decades. Fans weren't just attending games anymore. They were witnessing history. Every night carried the possibility that another record would disappear. Every shot seemed destined to become another highlight. The excitement surrounding Iowa basketball became unlike anything the program had ever experienced. Tickets sold out within minutes. Entire families traveled across the country just to watch one player. Television ratings reached numbers that many professional sporting events would envy. Young children started practicing logo three-pointers on neighborhood courts, pretending they were Caitlin Clark. She had become much more than a basketball player. She had become a cultural icon. Companies recognized her influence almost immediately. Major brands signed endorsement deals, making her one of the most marketable athletes in college sports. Yet despite the fame, Clark remained focused on basketball. She often reminded reporters that records were never her primary goal. Winning was. That mindset earned respect from teammates, coaches, and even opponents. Many rival players admitted that while competing against Caitlin Clark was incredibly difficult, it also pushed them to improve. She raised the standard for everyone. Every great athlete eventually reaches a point where success brings even greater expectations. For Caitlin Clark, every game carried enormous pressure. Opposing arenas were louder. Defenses became more aggressive. Every opponent wanted to be the team that stopped the biggest star in college basketball. But instead of shrinking under that pressure, Clark continued to shine. She embraced the challenge. She welcomed the spotlight, because by now, pressure had become part of who she was. And while records continued to fall, one final challenge remained. The next chapter wouldn't be about college basketball anymore. It would be about proving that everything she had accomplished could translate to the biggest stage in professional basketball. A new league, a new level of competition, and a whole new legacy waiting to be written. Some players leave records behind. Others leave a legacy. Caitlin Clark is building both. When Caitlin Clark's college career came to an end, there was little doubt about what would happen next. After rewriting record books, filling arenas across the country, and becoming one of the most recognizable athletes in America, she entered the 2024 WNBA draft as the clear #1 prospect. As expected, the Indiana Fever selected Caitlin Clark with the first overall pick. The announcement wasn't just another draft selection, it was a historic moment for women's basketball. Within hours, Clark jerseys sold out online. Ticket demand skyrocketed, television broadcasters adjusted their schedules to feature more Fever games, and media outlets around the world followed every step of her professional journey. It wasn't often that a rookie arrived carrying so much attention, but Caitlin Clark had already proven that she could bring millions of fans with her wherever she played. The transition to the WNBA, however, wasn't easy. Professional basketball is faster, stronger, and more demanding than the college game. Every opponent was an experienced athlete. Every defense was more physical. Every mistake was punished. For the first time in years, Clark found herself facing challenges unlike anything she had experienced before. Critics were quick to question whether her deep shooting and fast-paced style would work against elite professionals. Some believed the adjustment would take years. Others wondered if the pressure surrounding her was simply too great. But those who had followed her journey knew something important. Caitlin Clark had heard doubts before. She answered them the same way she always had, through hard work and performance. Game after game, she adapted to the speed of the professional game. Her passing remained extraordinary. Her shooting range forced defenders to guard her far beyond the three-point line. More importantly, she continued to improve with every appearance. As the season progressed, something remarkable happened. Attendance at WNBA games reached levels rarely seen before. Arenas filled with families, young fans, and first-time basketball viewers eager to watch Clark compete. Television ratings climbed dramatically, and women's basketball attracted more national attention than ever before. While no single player is responsible for the growth of an entire league, there is little doubt that Caitlin Clark became one of the driving forces behind this surge in interest. Alongside many other talented stars, she helped introduce the WNBA to a wider audience and inspired a new generation of fans. Her influence reached far beyond the basketball court. Young athletes began practicing logo-range three-pointers because of her confidence. Coaches encouraged players to expand their shooting range and develop better court vision. Parents brought their children to games, believing they were watching the future of the sport. For countless young girls, Caitlin Clark became proof that dreams can become reality through discipline, preparation, and relentless effort. Of course, success also brought pressure. Every game became a headline. Every performance was analyzed. Every victory celebrated. Every defeat criticized. Yet Clark continued to display the same calm confidence that had defined her since childhood. She never claimed to be perfect. She understood that growth comes from setbacks just as much as success. That mindset is one of the reasons her story resonates with so many people. It isn't only about talent. It's about resilience. It's about embracing challenges instead of avoiding them. Looking ahead, the future remains incredibly bright. Caitlin Clark has already achieved milestones that many athletes spend entire careers chasing, yet she is still only at the beginning of her professional journey. Championships, all-star appearances, Olympic opportunities, and countless other accomplishments may still lie ahead. No one can predict exactly how her career will unfold. Sports are unpredictable. Records are meant to be broken. New stars will emerge. New rivalries will be created. But one thing is already certain. Caitlin Clark has changed the way millions of people view women's basketball. She proved that sold-out arenas are possible. She proved that women's games can attract record-breaking television audiences. She proved that a young athlete from Iowa could inspire an entire generation simply by believing in herself. Perhaps her greatest achievement isn't found in a record book. Perhaps it's found in the thousands of young girls now walking into basketball gyms with greater confidence because they watched Caitlin Clark play. Perhaps it's found in every fan who discovered women's basketball for the very first time because of one unforgettable performance. Legacies are not measured only by trophies. They are measured by lives changed, by dreams inspired, by doors open for those who come next. And in that respect, Caitlin Clark has already secured her place among the most influential figures in the history of women's basketball. Her journey is far from over. The records will continue. The rivalries will evolve. The spotlight will grow even brighter. But one thing will never change. Whenever people tell the story of how women's basketball entered a new era, one name will always stand at the center of that conversation. Caitlin Clark. Not just a record breaker, not just a superstar, but a player who helped transform a sport, a player who inspired millions, and a legend whose story is still being written. This is Buzz Legacy, where moments become legends. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next legendary story is just around the corner.